Hello, this is Kormanik with Running Rehab. So in this one, basically I'm going to go over some kind of a diagnostic, simple little test to see how you could prevent a future injury or sort of overcome an injury you might have currently. If we're looking at, running, just simple mechanics of running, obviously most of the torque is generated at your key joints within the shoulders and hips, and then just kind of flicked all the way down from there, almost like if you whip a towel. All of the forces created towards the center mass and sort of whipped out. So it's important that we figure out where our weaknesses are at the torso, at our hips, and at our shoulders, okay? So this simple little test is to just kind of like scan to see which joint isn't doing great and which stability patterns are pretty poor in those joints. The reason why this sort of matters is that where you have pain isn't always where the issue is. I mean, that's been pretty well established. There is an obvious issue in an area where there is pain, whether it's in your knee, you might have an issue within the hip or the opposite hip, but it's important to sort of track down where the weaknesses are, because a lot of times pain is in an area where where muscles are being asked to do too much. And so oftentimes if you work to the other side, you'll find that the weakness is actually on the other side. And a lot of times, if you did like a manual muscle test, you'll find on the side that's actual injured, you'll find that the muscles are weak, but if you went through this kind of testing, you wouldn't find the weakness, which is interesting because a lot of times muscles are weak around a joint to protect an injury, or because they've been stabilizing too long, they're actually chronically weak because of that. So that becomes very complicated. So basically this is just sort of a way to just sort of scan these different areas to figure out where there might be a weakness. Now the shoulder is really an important one because a lot of times runners don't even really think about shoulders, but it actually matters a lot because if you tend to run like this a lot, that's going to really chew up your low back and give you tons of pain through your mid back and actually clamp down on your rib cage so that you can't actually get a good breath in. So really getting a good healthy shoulder actually will help with the kind of that forward to back mechanics so that you're not crossing and sort of wasting energy. So the key muscle here that we're going to walk you through, both with the shoulder and the hips, actually will help with that. So it's important to sort of pay attention to these areas. So basically what you're going to do, you're going to get in kind of a quadruped position on all fours. And you're basically just going to, so it's called like four-way stops. So basically you're just going to kind of lean into each joint. Lean into the left shoulder, left hip, right hip. And then do it very slow, but just sort of see how the muscles are being recruited around the joint. In the shoulder, you should feel the serratus anterior down here activating, okay? You can feel a little bit in through the pec and the rest of the shoulder, but you really should primarily feel it down through here, okay? In the hip, you should pretty much exclusively feel it in the glutes. Specifically a little bit more on the side in the gluteus medius. So doing the shoulders first, we're on all fours. Good flat open hand. You don't want to have like a curled up or clenched hand. You want to basically put all the pressure through the thumb and the first finger and the fifth finger, okay? And then you're going to do that on both sides. So the first thing will lean into the left. So we're going to take all the body weight and put it off to the left shoulder. And now that I'm fully loading this left arm, I shouldn't feel anything, maybe a little in the triceps, a little in the back of the shoulder, but primarily through here, okay? So if you feel that, that's good. Then, and you want to keep your spine nice and straight and you're just sort of leaning onto that joint, okay? So now we're going to go on the right one. And then we're going to go into this one and just stop when I kind of just feel like I come to a terminal range. So again, I feel nice and strong down through the serratus, applying equal pressure through these regions. So those are good. I feel a little weaker on this right one, like I feel like I'm working a little bit more in the front here. So I'll take note of that I have, maybe a little bit more of a weakness on that right serratus, which makes sense because I have had a previous injury in the shoulder. Now going to the hips. So in the hips, you basically will just kind of lean in the hips, and then you might have to push yourself a little bit onto that hip, and you're just sort of diving about 45 degrees back, okay? And so I'm lifting my opposite leg, and I'm feeling a ton of burning and pressure right in the glutes, and then you'll drive back, using your glute to drive back. So again, even with the shoulders and the hips, you're sort of going at 45 degrees. So I'm going 45 degrees this way, 45 degrees this way, and then now for the right hip, 45 degrees this way, back into the right hip. And I feel substantially less activation on this one. So my brain's like, I can't even really feel what's happening in the glute. So I feel a lot more pressure in the groin and in the front of the hip on this one, okay? So then, now that I know that, I'm like, okay, I feel a little off in the right arm, in the right hip. I feel like on the left side I had really good control. So a simple thing you could do is just something like a side bridge with rotation, now that you know that, to kind of train those areas, to coordinate those two regions. You could even do like clam work to help with the glute med. So basically, any exercise that's going to sort of activate the glute medius or the serratus. This is just sort of the diagnostic test to just sort of figure out which one is more of a deficit. And again, it's critical because it's not always related to the side that has pain or the dysfunction that you think is there, or the muscle tightness. So, and it's also, if you don't have any issues, it's to prevent any future issues, to just make sure you're good. So again, you lean into each side, feel it in the glute med, okay, and then in the serratus, all right?